Hello, and welcome to Untitled Common Sense. I think this will be episode 13. Fun fact, I did two episode 13s yesterday, but wasn't feeling it. Your boy was at a kind of at a low, so those videos just came off kind of ranty. Didn't really have a point to them, and I want to be more intentional with the videos I do for this channel. I want to cut through the chaff, find the real substance, talk about things where we can actually move the bar, and things of that nature. So with that being said, I think today's topic is going to be one that I've been kind of mulling over in my mind for a bit. It concerns young men and what seems to be their lack of purpose. There seems to be an epidemic where they are feeling left out or ashamed or admonished or picked upon in today's society. And I want to touch on that. As a former young man myself, I can relate to a lot of what has been talked about in regards to young guys. I mean, growing up as a male, especially in America or maybe other places, because I feel like the aspect of maleness is pretty defined. The traditional aspects, I should say, are pretty defined. And as a former young man and as a current older man in my 40s, I can relate to that journey. Now, I think fundamentally, this problem that young men are facing in today's society comes down to something that I can only call this aspirational thought of what a man should be. I think one of the things that we face in today's society, and it's not just men, I think society as a general is trying to find itself. American society especially is trying to find itself. It doesn't know what it wants to be. And I think for men, this is just a symptom of that lack of purpose, that lack of definition of what you should be. Much the same way that our American government and our culture is trying to find out whether we want to be this, hopeful, optimistic, paragon of virtue, or we want to be crappy, self-serving, selfish, alpha dogs. I think the same thing is happening to men. And more importantly, it's happening to men because some of the paradigms that have long since been pillars in our society are now being questioned. Most at the forefront of that, probably the one that's being called out the most is quote unquote the patriarchy, or especially like white male privilege. That things within that name nebula. The establishment is very much focused, is male dominated. Males typically, especially white males, have a leg up amongst all other different types of groups. And for America, I think it's safe to say that those values inherent in that representation of the, typical white male, Anglo-Saxon, Protestant, Christian, is kind of like the archetype around which all American ideals of male are based on. That ideal is a guy who is confident, is a leader, is strong, doesn't back down, is somebody who others look up to, is somebody who's sure of himself, is somebody who's attractive to women, somebody who's good in business. He can do no wrong, and wherever he goes, he's looked upon as like, that's the guy, And that's long been kind of like the typical male, archetype. I mean, you got your Marlboro man. He's more silent, stoic type, but he's a rustic man who lives by his own rules and smokes a Marlboro after a hard day of driving the trail and doing cowboy stuff. And then you got the action hero, the guy who's, muscles and brawn and cleverness, and, he can take out hundreds of dudes and no one can stop him. And or you even got, if you want to go a little bit more, I guess, academic or nerdier, you got your finance bro, somebody who exhibits all those things, but in the world of finance, knows money, is a deal maker, can find, all the women love him, has lots of money, is flashy, is young, he's hot, he's up and coming, he's going to be the new it guy, and all of these kind of like are variations of the same thing. Just confident, self-assured man who exhibits all the typical masculine qualities, is strong, is confident, it's a leader, all those typical things are the male archetype here in America. But what we're finding, and this is something that I personally believe, and I'll even recount my own experience, how it ties into this, is that there is a disparity between that traditional American ideal of masculinity or just overall masculinity. Because I think even the American ideal has a lot of similarities with just the worldwide ideal of masculinity. But in the context of this, that traditional ideal doesn't match the realities of being a man in today's world. And you might be saying, how is that? And I think one of the big things about that masculine ideal is that as our society advances and as we evolve as a society and more things become known and we challenge more social norms and things become more malleable, that masculine ideal just doesn't fit for a large amount of young men. I remember when I was growing up, and I was born in the 80s, so I grew up in the late 80s, early 90s. The masculine ideal was pretty much a given. Like if you were a boy, you played basketball, you played sports, you did typically masculine things. Like when it was recess, you went and played with the other boys. I remember being a boy, and there was some of the young guys in my class who jump rope with girls. And at the time, you would just be like, "That's gay. Men don't jump rope. They don't. If you're gonna sit there and talk to girls during recess, you must be gay." And it was just accepted that boys are going to do boy things. And I remember when I was in like second grade or whatever, I started getting into RPGs, role-playing games. And I found a friend who was also interested in that. And what I would start doing every so often was, instead of playing basketball or football with the other guys like I had usually done, because I love the sports. It wasn't like this was me doing something I didn't want to do. But, in discovering that I had a love for fantasy and RPGs and things of this nature, I would rather go off with this other friend and we would make believe our own adventures. And that typically, I remember when I started doing that, people were kind of giving me odd looks, like, why would you go and pretend to do that? Like, that's stupid. And you kind of get that. And I kind of got a little bit of that same like disparagement where like, you're not doing what you should be doing. Like you're a dude, you need to be playing baseball or football and basketball. And I remember at the time I was kind of getting like tired of those same three things. Like all we do is just go play basketball or football and baseball. And there were days where I really was like into it, but there were also days where I'm like, I'm just tired of doing these things. Like, is this all there is? And I think even for me back then in the 90s and 80s, I was feeling a little bit of that chafing, Like, yes, I'm a male and I typically enjoyed male things. I watch male-centric cartoons. I like to play sports just like males, but I wasn't really super into it the way I think a lot of males are. Even to this day, I don't follow sports, professional sports. I just find it boring. But, I played it as a kid, though I didn't play it to the same degree as other kids. But I did it, and I did typically male things. But even then, there comes a time where that traditional ideal just chafes because you, as your unique self, don't like they always say, no minority, no majority, no one type of people is a monolith, and that goes for males. And that was my first experience with that kind of chafing with the male ideal, that I had to constantly be doing this, that, and the third when I really wanted to be maybe doing this and that, and then some of this over there. And I think as we progressed as a society, one of the things I noticed as I was getting older was like, it's kind of like that shift we had where it started being cool to be geeky. Like reading comic books started being cool, being nerdy started to be cool. And that was kind of a paradigm shift of the traditional male ideal. Because before that, I mean, if you look at any 80s movie, the cool kids were always jocks. The nerds were always these geeky computer people, and they were both shown in different lights. Like, yes, a lot of the movies showed the jocks as like the enemies and the nerds as the underdogs, but it would still have that implied bias that if you were a jock, A-okay. If you were a nerd, whoa, you're gonna have troubles. The girls are not gonna like you. You're gonna be odd or weird or kooky. You're not gonna be somebody people look to be a leader, or you're not gonna be somebody worth knowing. A lot of those stories were like they have to prove themselves, they have to prove their worth and things like that. And so, it wasn't until we started getting into the 90s, and I think even the rise of the tech bro is a perfect example. These kids are growing up in the 90s and 2000s, and that shift where it became cool to be geeky, it became cool to be nerdy, and more different ideals of masculinity started becoming acceptable. Like, you've always had the rock star, but then now the rock star could even be more ambiguous and more, metrosexual happened, where men started to be more fluid in their gender displays. And what was encouraging to me growing up, and I think I came up in a good time. I think for me, honestly, I'd have been fine at any time because I was those traditional masculine traits were never so off-putting to me. I adopted a lot of them. I do see a lot of them in myself. So I never had a hard time like occupying that space. But if you're a young man who just doesn't meet the ideal for whatever reason, because we're all different people, it then becomes hard to feel like you're going to be the man that people tell you you're going to grow up to be. When I was growing up, that softening made it easier for a guy like me, who you could say didn't really have a lot of difficulties in that realm, to feel comfortable in himself and his skin as he's growing up, so that by the time that I became the age that I am, I'm comfortable in my manhood. I'm comfortable with the things that I love. I'm comfortable, with displaying a certain amount of traits that are not typically categorized as male traits, because I'm like, dude, this is who I am. I'm a dude. And in that, I own my maleness. But I think what's happening with a lot of young guys today is that And I think, like I said, I think this is symptomatic of a larger thing with our society, is that because things are so nebulous, there's a real big attraction to the traditional because it's solid. It's set in stone. It's a certain rule book. It's not going to change. You follow this, you will be a man. Same with our society. Our society is trying to find out whether it should be this or that. And the more conservative ideals harken to a time where, like, you don't have to think about all the gray areas. Everything's black and white, spelled out for you. All you got to do is just press play and it'll take care of itself. And there's a lot of attractiveness to that. And I think for a lot of men, it's the reason why that alt-right red pill pipeline is so attractive. Because when you're a young man who probably is all over the place, you're probably skinny, maybe you're not very athletic, maybe you're not like naturally charismatic, so you can't talk to girls. Maybe you have any number of other things you're not aware of that just kind of work against you as a man. It's hard living up to this masculine ideal of this like 6'3", 200 pounds, cut, chiseled dude who is top of his class, is captain of the football team, always dates the hot girl. Like, a lot of guys don't aren't that. I wasn't that. When I was growing up, I was not popular with women. I was not attractive to women. Like I said, I had nerdy, geeky tendencies. I like to draw. Yeah, I played sports, but I didn't join any little leagues or teams like that. Like I would rather be at home and play video games. You know, all these things that even now, some of them are looked upon disparagingly, especially video games. My girlfriend now thinks they are the devil and is so anti-video game for no real reason other that society's like video games are bad. It's a waste of time. You're going to waste your life with them. And so when you grow up and you have all these proclivities that don't necessarily fit this ideal male paradigm, and you see yourself changing and you're like, I don't fit what I'm seeing on TV or what society's telling to me, it becomes this dissonance. And I can understand why young men start experiencing numerous L's because they're not charismatic or they don't know how to talk to women. Like it's intimidating talking to women. Before I went to college, I cannot say that I had any capability in talking to women in any serious, real way. I mean, I could talk to girls. I had no problem. I wasn't shy. I wasn't like weird. But like to talk to them in a confident way with the intent of like romantic aspirations. Oh man, dude, you couldn't get me near a girl. Like I was just terrified. Because I wasn't the captain of the football team or didn't play basketball or I wasn't 6'2". And I'm not a short man, I'm 6 feet, but like there's always somebody taller. There's always somebody more good looking. There's always somebody with better clothes. There's always somebody smoother. And for males, it's very, and it may be the same for females, but for males, it's very hierarchical. I think for the most part, in a lot of male paradigms, that traditional model stands, and the closer you are to it, the more status you innately are perceived of having. And usually, as you get older, that starts to peter out. I've known people who don't fit the masculine ideal who are like the shit, and girls love them, and people are like, that's the guy, and they're leaders. And just like I've met guys who fit that ideal, and they're total duds. Usually as you get older and you get past, grammar school and high school and all those things where status and, hierarchy are really, 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 really stressed, it kind of eases out. And like for me, going to college was a benefit because it allowed me to get out from under the traditional yoke of my high school and grammar school, my upbringing and being in the city. And then I was just amongst different people who, that's one of the things I like about college. You get such a great diversity of people that you start to find people who gravitate to you for who you are, and you realize you don't have to hold on to these ideologies and these paradigms that don't fit you, and you could pick and choose what works for you and then build off that to become who you are. One thing that I always say to my daughter, she's not a guy, but it still applies to her, because I think even ladies have their own crucible of femininity that they're working through as well. But what I always tell her is that, the best version of the best person you can be is yourself. And I think that's something that young men don't really hear often enough. They often hear the best version of you is that. That's what someone like an Andrew Tate tells you. It's like, you got to be rich, you got to be strong, you have to have many women, you have to, everything has to be your way. And, and he speaks from authority. And so he seems very like genuine. I mean, I guess he believes what he believes, but he seems so forceful and confident. And you see his videos and he's on yachts and he's driving Ferraris and he's got tons of women. And he talks about, I get women and do this and I'm rich and I'm powerful. And that's one way to do it. But a lot of people aren't that way. A lot of people are like sensitive. Some are quiet, some are a little bit obtuse and nerdy. But that doesn't mean that can't be an expression of manhood. But those guys will never be the best version of themselves as long as they try to be somebody else. And I think for me, one of the things that allowed me to become the man that I was and am is that I was able to flourish under the umbrella of me, meaning I wasn't looking at other people to define my manhood. I felt comfortable enough in the traits that I had and the traits that I exhibited and the thinking that I was thinking that I felt comfortable in my, arrival at manhood. So that by the time that I was in my 20s and I left college, I was like, yo, this is who Derek is. This is who I am. Like I like to play video games. I like to, do deep dives of like nerdy shit. I like sci-fi. I like fantasy. I like to draw. I don't particularly care for, professional sports. I learned how to talk to women. And even in learning to talk to women, I learned how to advocate for myself as I am and not, hide aspects. Because that's another thing. Not everything about you may be attractive to women, which is a big factor, I think, that drives young men, especially young men, but older men too. Men in general, it's always a big factor. But especially when you're young, it's a very weighted factor. I'm older now, so I don't like give two fucks. But when I was younger, that was definitely a driving force. And I remember many a time I would consciously withhold certain aspects of myself from the women I were talking to because I knew that they wouldn't find it attractive. Oh, I like to play video games? Nah, that's not how you're gonna get a girl. Oh, you like to, you have an interest in D&D and you like fantasy books? No, we're not going to talk about that. How about we just talk about, random other stuff like I'm a funny guy. Let's tell jokes. I'm a good listener. Hey, I'll do that. That's cool. But like the things that were like, I would say were really inherent to my personality, I kind of downplayed. And I think that's a lot what's happening now. You have a lot of men who are unsure of who they are, first off. They know they're going to become a man, but the outlook to them currently just doesn't seem, they don't seem to be meeting at any point. And you want girls and you don't want to be a loser, but currently you're just not exhibiting any like potential to be anything but that. And talking to girls is hard, and girls always go for this guy and they make us feel, shitty. And look, I get it, man. It's hard out there for a pimp, as the saying goes. But one of the fundamental things that I would want to tell young men is that being yourself, living your truth, standing in your own shoes, not somebody else's, and cultivating that foundation will take you light years further down the path of being the man you want to be than following any of this other stuff. I think it's sad that you see a lot of these red pill guys, like they're taking advantage of a unique vulnerability in men. I feel like unlike women who have the opportunity to express their vulnerabilities and to get genuine feedback and genuine support for that, men not so much. Our culture is really divided on being this like island army of one stoic individual who doesn't need the support of others. And you see it playing out in real time. These young guys have no friends. They become increasingly more angry and frustrated when all they need is just a little bit of, some people just saying like, yo, dog, I hear you. It's okay. And what these red pill and right-wing ideologies promise, again, as I mentioned in other videos, is just an addressing of your grievance. They provide that shoulder to lean on, say, I understand, brother. I hear exactly what you're saying. But what they fail to do is to really help these guys work through their frustrations. As I mentioned in my flirtation with the right video, I've had my heart broken. Like I've been looked upon by the female gaze unfavorably, and it sucks, dude. And I like to think of myself as a guy, like I like to think that, I didn't have as many roadblocks to having relationships as women as maybe some of these other men have, but I've definitely experienced my share of defeat. And you do build resentment. No one likes to be dismissed, or nobody likes to be rejected. It just doesn't feel good. We as humans are not built for rejection. We're built for communal inclusiveness, which is why I think our society is struggling today. In all the ways that we can be united, we just find ways to divide one another. And you see where it's leading us. Issues that should be non-issues are the biggest issues in the world. We have a government which feeds into that divisiveness. Everybody feels like somebody's always taking advantage of them. I mean, that's literally the thinking of Donald Trump, that the entire world is taking advantage of the United States. You see how like this is all building on itself. There are young men at home who feel like they're being taken advantage of, or things are unfair and they're not getting a fair shake. And you trickle that all the way up, and you got Donald Trump saying America is being taken advantage of. Everybody's using us. JD Vance is saying like, we're not here to protect everybody. You guys need to protect yourself. And like, it's that divisive individualism, which I think runs inherent in manhood, and it's being exasperated, as opposed to being like, no, let's rein this back in. Let's all come together and let's figure this out. So, you know, it's just one of those things that I think needs to get addressed, but seriously, not with these fly-by-night grifting, red pill things. Like, if these young men are angry and they feel alone, we have to address what that means. Hell, there's somebody out there who's listening to this video and wants to ask me a question, go right ahead. I'm not so old that I don't remember what it's like being a young man. And I do see the need for young men to be able to like air their grievances, but also work towards a realistic and healthy way of overcoming that. Because at the end of the day, these guys, all they want to do is just be seen as like cool dudes. They just want to be like, yo, people recognize them as a man. They respect them as such, regardless of what they do. And it's okay, you know? So that's my piece for that. I might have a follow-up video to this one on the same topic after this, talking about it. But I did want to address this a little bit, and we'll see how people respond, because I do think, you know, as a guy, this is one subject I'm uniquely suited to talking about. And, you know, it came as a shock to me that guys were feeling this way. But again, that goes to the culture, overall culture of men, is that a lot of guys just suffer in silence. I've myself suffered in silence on various occasions. And I often feel that I'm not given, even now, me, and I'm more well-adjusted than some of these other guys, I feel like I'm not given the space to really air my grievances or, you know, come at things from my point of view. Because, you know, as a man, you're meant to just bear the weight of the world on your shoulders, keep a smile and not let anybody know you're hurting inside. And I think the cracks are starting to show. And I think one way to help unifying our nation and our world, because obviously these hurt guys are going out and becoming the very people we see in government. Case in point, Stephen Miller, that dude is, but you could tell he's angry for whatever reason. But if you look at the guy, he exhibits a lot of qualities of somebody who probably would be looked at as like, yo, you don't fit the male stereotype. He's kind of small and squirmy, and he gets angry and riled up, and he just has an odd demeanor. And that's not classic male behavior. A regular dude would just be like, yo, why are you so angry about this? Like, dude, there are guys who would say he gives off feminine energy, the way he just gets riled up and complains about, you know, immigration and foreigners and stuff like that. Like, I've rolled with people who be like, yo, you sound like a bitch. But that's to say he doesn't fit the typical narrative of what we think is a male. And look where that's gotten him. This is a man who exhibits tons of anger. This is a man who is lashing out. he seems to relish in the suffering of others to a degree that you usually, I don't roll with anybody who's like that malicious, but this man hates. He hates. And there's other examples. Elon Musk doesn't traditionally fit the role as the stereotypical dude. He's awkward. He may have autism. I don't know. He says a lot of shit. He's nerdy. He seems to impose upon people, and people are like, "Yo, you just don't get social cues." And but yet he likes to play the tough guy, that man. And when it falls flat, you can see the anger welling up. Like he does things with Doge and then wonders why people hates him. And you can see the disconnect. Like if he had just stayed in his lane, if he had just said like, I'm just an awkward, nerdy dude. I'm not trying to be this I am meme, this larger than life figure. He might have found better success. But that's a video for another day. Wow, 30 minutes, dude. I'm trying to keep these videos short, but I feel like I get in front of the screen and I just start yapping. So I'm gonna try to like thin them down. I'm gonna try. I just like to wax loquaciously, so bear with me. But yeah, with that ends this episode. Thanks for joining me. Please comment and all that other jazz. Like I said, I'm here to start a conversation, to get people to know that we are all in this together. We can be better. We should be better. And thanks for listening. Take care.